What's going on, motivators? Today we got another video. Hey, first off, I want to say thanks. Currently at 35 subscribers. Started my channel a couple days ago. You're the one helping push this channel forward, so appreciate that. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share a Black veteran perspective. All right, let's get into this.
The International Olympic Committee announcing a new policy to ensure only biological females compete in women's competitions. Athletes will now have to undergo gene screenings, which is collected via saliva, cheek swab, or blood sample, and determines whether a Y chromosome is present. Listen to this.
I passionately believe in the rights of all Olympians to take part in fair competition. The scientific evidence is very clear. Male chromosomes give performance advantages in sports that rely on strength, power, or endurance. At the Olympic Games, even the smallest margins can be the difference between victory and defeat. So it's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category.
A major decision by the Olympic Committee. Independent women's...
Wow. Talking about fairness. We all remember we have people in government, even in the Supreme Court, who couldn't identify what a woman was.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law and I...
Insanity. Insanity.
Forum Ambassador Peyton McNabb joins me now. Peyton, good morning to you. The IOC also said that athlete feedback was taken into consideration, writing, quote, athletes provided crucial feedback. There was a strong consensus that fairness and safety in the female category required clear science-based eligibility rules and that protecting the female category is a common priority. What is your reaction to this and what the trickle-down effect could be?
Again, I have nothing, zero against transgender personnel, whether it be male or female. But I have a daughter, right? She worked her whole life to be in gymnastics. I would be pissed if a male would be transgendered into a female and then compete and then she lose a spot. I mean, any loving parent or someone with common sense would take some offense to that. Because you've worked your whole life to get to somewhere. And because someone couldn't compete in another category, now they're pushing you down the line in yours. You got to remember again, female fought strongly to separate and have their own sport from men. And now they've risen to the highest of levels. And now a transgender could take that away from them. Common sense approach, guys. Again, I have nothing against personnel who are transgender. We all know biology. Sometimes there are things that happen where personnel may have two different organs. I am not saying anything pertaining to that individual, right? You could believe whatever you want to believe. That is your choice. But I think when it starts impacting people or other people's belief and other people's way of life, I think then it becomes very problematic. Very problematic.
Of course, I think this is a huge step in the right direction. Long overdue with that, but I think it's really important to add that the IOC was listening to their athletes, which is something that a lot of organizations aren't willing to do. Of course, the IOC is the most influential governing body in sports, so I think hopefully this clears up some inconsistency within other organizations like the NCAA, who thinks that they're protecting women by requiring a birth certificate, which in several states you're able to change that. So I think this is a huge win for women. I, of course, am very excited for this because oftentimes there is a lack of clarity and there is an inconsistency in protecting women's sports, and women are fighting way too hard to have these basic rights back.
Again, women shouldn't fight anymore. They're fought. They're separate sports from men. You got men basketball, men football, men this, men that. Women have their own piece, right? Nothing against transgender personnel, but it is not fair We live in a world of fairness, right? We all know that men, our bone density is different from women. Doesn't matter what kind of drugs you take. If you're a man transitioning to a woman, you're always going to be stronger. But tell me, why is it never the opposite? Why don't we see women transitioning to men playing in men's sports? I can tell you why. Because we know it's going to be a shellacking. It's going to be an unfair advantage. We all know that. We all know that. And if you don't, I think, hey, there might be an issue with you too. We all know that if a woman who transitioned into a man, right, plays whether it be football, right, basketball, they're going to be dunked on. And plus, women cannot dunk, right? But I digress. But the point still being, we know it would be very, very different. That's why we don't see it. We don't see women who transition to men in men's sport because the advantage would be very, very different. They only see it one way. Only see it one way. And better yet, why don't we see women transgender competing against men transgender? That's a thought.
For there to be any loopholes in getting around that.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if this will change the minds of certain lawmakers on a state basis that still say that transgender athletes can be in women's sports. Former Olympian Caitlyn Jenner spoke to...
Yeah, the thing is that we hope it does, but the world has become so progressive that everybody's all about power. It's not about doing the right thing anymore. It's all about power. So you have your local senators, you have your representatives from your state. They just want to stay in power and they're going to chase the votes. It's all about what the vote is. I mean, that's what politics is anyway. But they're going to put their own situation aside of knowing what a woman is for the most women. And they're going to vote on policies that goes against everything that they hold dear.
Christy Coventry is the first female president of the IOC, and she's the first one to make the right decision. I think she has a better understanding of the issue. We know it's wrong. It's been wrong forever.
I think that's very funny. There have been men before who couldn't make the right decision to separate female from male and transgender from female sport. It took a woman to come in, very surprisingly.
Congratulations to the IOC to finally making the right decision. They're at the top of the food chain. So what's going to happen from here? It's like a domino.
I mean, like we could see in the video too, XY and XX chromosome. We all learned this in school. Biology 101. I feel like we're going backwards. We're supposed to be moving forward. I think we're going back to the Stone Age of identifying what male and female is. It's very, very terrifying.
Effect. It'll start working its way down.
Yeah, and there is Caitlyn talking about that domino effect once again. And Christy Coventry is a former Olympic champion from Zimbabwe. She was a swimmer, and she says that this is purely science-based. Final thoughts to you on this?
Absolutely. I mean, this is just the same thing we've been saying over and over again. I think Jenner makes a really good point here. This could be trickling down, and this should be. I mean, this is the highest stage for an athlete, and if they're making the right call, then there's no reason why women and girls shouldn't be protected in every single category at every single level. And I can guarantee that the women that are fighting for this are not going to stop until that is the reality.
All right, we all remember this video.
University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thomas taking first place in the NCAA 500-yard freestyle. She is the first transgender athlete to be crowned NCAA champion, but not without controversy because critics say she has an unfair physical advantage over the other swimmers and should not have been allowed to compete. Now, second place went to University of Virginia swimmer Emma Wyant, who won a silver medal.
We have to remember, too, though, when competing against men, I think it was like in the 100th. Like that's where she actually ranked. So like going against women, being ranked first, that's a huge change. That's a huge change.
In last year's Tokyo Olympics. She's getting an outpouring of support on social media, with some calling her the true winner. And we saw, Lauren, at that medal ceremony, the crowd was virtually silent when Leah Thomas.
Well, yeah, she was the true winner. Leah Thomas was not. She was the true winner. And don't forget this, in the Olympics, last Olympics, you had, during boxing, right, a transgender person would claim that they were born female. Now they came out and said that they were always male. A woman lost to that, right? Could you imagine your daughter getting punched in a sport supposed to go against women, but the force is coming from is tenfold because it's from a man? I'm saying, I don't care how many medication you take, it still won't put you in that perspective of being in the same level as a woman. You're always going to be stronger. And don't get me wrong, too. There are some men who are weaker than some women. But we're talking about majority on average. You put the strongest women against the strongest men, I'm telling you, it won't even be close. All right, let's see what Megan Rapinoe had to say about this. Unfortunately, we have to say that all in the same breath as a really horrible rule came out from the International Olympic Committee. Rapinoe said as she praised the transgender community. They announced a new policy that they're calling, I can't even believe that they're calling it this, because it has nothing to do with protecting women. I feel like two people who played at the very highest level for every competition that you could don't agree with this and never felt like this was an issue at all. The protection of female women category. Rapinoe also said she dismissed the notion that the policy was rooted in science and said that the IOC was subjecting women to evasive testing. Are we serious? Evasive testing? It makes no sense, right? If you're going any kind of like major sport, whether it be UFC, boxing, they test you to make sure you have no performance enhancing drugs, PEDs, steroids. When you go to the Olympics, track and field, swimming, they all do the same thing to make sure there's not an unfair advantage. Switch it around. A transgender woman competing in a female sport is a performance enhancing drug. Natural performance enhancing drug. They were born with it. That is unfair advantage. Common sense approach, guys. It only makes sense. We're going back to science and biology. It only makes sense. But wait, I do have a proposition. We could fix this very easily. It's very easy to be fixed. We have male sports, we have female sports, and we have a new category, transgender. Why don't we have transgender sports? Whether it be that you're a male transgender or female transgender, you compete in that sport. Track and field, boxing, NBA, football, whatever it is, you compete in there. That would solve everything. I don't think anyone would have any fault in that, because transgender are competing against transgender. Females against females. Men against men. Think about it. We would not put a teenager to compete against an adult, right? Because we could see the unfair advantage in that. So just leave it as transgender in one corner, male in the other, and female in the center. You have 3 different categories of sports now, right? But it won't never happen because the advantage only goes one way. A transgender female or man to female will whoop a female, right? In any sport that they have. Vice versa, a female transitioning to a male, we don't see it because it doesn't make sense. The guy would be 10 times stronger to that female in that category. Anyway, please like, comment, subscribe, and share a Black veteran perspective. Stay motivated.